We're curving. Come and sit by me. Has everyone got a seat? Have a seat. Let's see where we're good. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's play briefing. My name is Min Colley-Holmes. I'm the Director of Programming here at Queensland Theatre Company and thrilled to have you all here tonight. So for joining us, thank you. So before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we at Queensland Theatre Company respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and elders of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations of Queensland on whose land we work, perform and create theatre. They've been doing it for generations and we are very, very privileged to continue that tradition here. So we're here for the play briefing on Malacañang Palace. These extraordinary humans to my left have all been rehearsing together over the past 3 weeks, but you had a week before that, so it's been 4 weeks of rehearsal. This is actually the first time that they have physically stepped on the set. The set got finished bumping in today, so it's very exciting for everyone. Don't get distracted in the theatre. So Malacañang Palace is the 2025 winner of the Queensland Premier Drama Award. So probably some of you here know that we do that every 2 years in partnership with the Queensland Government. So it's very exciting for us. This will be the first time this play has ever been seen. It's on Saturday night as our first preview. So written by Jordan Shea, directed by Kenneth Moraleda, who's here with us tonight, and starring an all-Filipino-Australian cast, it represents a watershed moment in Australian-Filipino theatre set right here in Queensland. So before I give you a bit more context, I might just ask everyone to introduce who they are and the role or what they do within the production. Can we start to my left?
Hello, my name is Christine Felmingham. I'm the lighting designer.
Hi everyone, my name is Marcus Rivera. I'm one of the cast. I'm playing Ernie in Malacañang Palace.
Hello everyone, my name is Miguel. I am playing young Martin.
Hi, I'm Marty Alex and I'm playing young Ernie.
Hey, I'm Mark Paggio. I'm playing Leo.
Hi, my name is Mike Zarati. I'm playing old Martin.
Hi, I'm Sam Chang, and I'm the composer and sound designer for Malacañang Palace.
I'm Nevin Howell. I'm the video designer.
Magandang gabi. I'm Kenneth Moraleda, and I am the director.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Allen, and I'm the set and costume designer.
Absolutely. These wonderful humans, they've been rehearsing all day, and here they are tonight to talk to you. So that's we're thrilled. Thank you, everyone. So the judging panel for the QPDA described the work as epic in its theatricality. It's a global and historic conversation whose themes continue to resonate in the world right now. It's ambitious in scale, as you can see from the set, and will take us on an unforgettable journey through a tantalising collision of languages, times and places. Malacañang Palace is about the power of ordinary people creating history and change. For those who are not familiar with the work, Malacañang Palace plays out across 2 points in time. 1986, Manila. As the world watches, a nation rises against a regime and history shifts almost overnight. During the People Power Revolution, Martin and Ernie climb the walls of Malacañang Palace, storm its hallways, and for one fleeting moment, claim a falling dictator's throne. Heroes, if only for a night. Nearly 40 years later, in Brisbane, the brothers reunite in Martin's new home in Sunnybank. With Marcus's heir poised for election and Martin's teenage son Leo demanding change, the three men must confront the legacies they carry and the choices that will define their future. So it's an epic story across generations, which is a very ambitious task, but beautifully crafted by Jordan. Kenneth, perhaps you can talk to us first, because you've been on the journey from the creative developments. Can you, and you're now obviously seeing it all its way to its main stage premiere. We're thrilled to have you here. It's your Queensland Theatre Company debut, as it is for many of them, but we are loving having you here in the building. How does it feel? What are the audiences going to experience?
There's some really big feelings that we're feeling in the room, and I think that will transpose over to the stage. from the stage to you guys. It's a massive history that the two main characters have gone through, and it's a denial of that history at the same time while they adapt and exist in Australia. We get to see the younger versions of themselves in Manila. We get to see in Sunnybank in a domestic situation their home with the senior versions of themselves, and then there's another world of the internet and chat threads and political activism through that lens that is explored as well. So that's another world that we do. When you talk about the language, there's a little bit of Tagalog in this for all the Filipinos, because it's important to, it's one of the conversations of the play, is how to retain your culture if you're away from the homeland, or if you've never been to the homeland even, and yet identify as somebody who is Filipino. So yeah, so those, but even if it's specific to this family and specific to the Filipino culture, there's so many things that can be gamed thematically, from parenting, from using your voice or not using your voice, for and I'm sure some of the cast can talk to some of the themes that have come across as we were playing it. But I would love to. Can I pass on to Jeremy to talk about those worlds?
Of course yes. You can. Yeah.
Should I just talk generally about the design and where we kind of started? Yeah. So yeah, as Kenneth mentioned, we're in three kind of very separate, different worlds here. We're in Manila in 1986. We're in Sunnybank in 2022, and we're on the internet. And how do you bridge those three very separate spaces in one space on a relatively small stage like the Bille Brown? So I think for me, one of the key things was a visual representation of the namesake of this play, Malacañang, which is the palace that you can see behind me. If you've been to Manila, it sits on the Pasig River, and it's kind of it's a metonym now for the rule of the Marcoses, Imelda and Ferdinand Marcos particularly. And it's the place that was the core of that protest, and as well as Edsa Avenue. So there's a kind of a panoply of elements that kind of come together on this one space. And I kind of always liked the idea that it felt a little bit like a collage of all these spaces kind of pushed together. Because the play has this beautiful poetic language that takes us through all these different spaces as well. I wanted to provide a space that could allow us to kind of meld and mend those spaces as much as possible. And also I kind of, and this came through rehearsal as well, what we call stacking, the idea of like these two characters who are the same character but different in age, and being able to kind of stage them in a way where they are in similar positions, and this idea of having the kind of two levels behind me, because these upper levels also get used quite a bit too. So the kind of top of these platforms behind me, they get used, and we kind of stack characters on top of each other so that we kind of mirror them. And I kind of like that visual idea, and that carries across in a few different places throughout the play. And then, of course, with costume as well, that was another big part of telling that story, being able to differentiate 1986 and 2022, and for Leo particularly what it means to be kind of a young queer individual in 2022 in Brisbane, was important in the way that they express themselves. So there's this kind of real intentional clash of styles and ideas in this, much like the play itself. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
That's a really lovely segue, actually. That the parallel, well, I guess the two timelines, or the three worlds and the languages that you're talking about. One of the other tools, the wonderful tools that we have available for us in the theatre, is the layer that video and lighting design can bring to the set and costume, the sort of the base that Jeremy has created. Nevin and Christine, I'd love to hear from you both. Memory is such a big part of the story. How do your worlds, the video world and the lighting, maybe we'll start with you, Nevin, and we'll come to you, Christine. How does your world, what language is that providing, and where does that sit in the dramaturgy of the work?
I think it's very safe to say that we've drawn from a lot of photographs of the time. Those photographs have helped assist some of the staging that you see on set. We've been talking, Ari Polani and I, we've been talking with our best friend, Peter Charlesworth, who was a photographer that was actually there at the time of the palace being run over. And he's been really graceful in giving us images to use on the set to be projected, to also give audiences a bit of a glimpse into that time. So that, yes, there's a lot of like historical imagery. But yeah, there's also that really quick fire TikTok world where images kind of just swipe up and swipe out really rapidly, which kind of divvies up the rhythm a bit, whereas the historical scenes kind of wisp in. They're very poetic as to really support the words that Geordie has written in those scenes. Yeah, sorry, I was a bit waffly, but hopefully
absolutely.
you got
I was
something
just
from
going
that.
to, exactly as you did, shout Ari out up there, the fabulous
Mr.
producer.
Polani.
They've done a huge amount of work around the permissions and because every time you do a production, you have to obviously ask permission if you're going to use existing photocopies, images or music. And there's been quite a bit of detective work done, but you've done an exceptional job between the two of you, so acknowledging that. I guess before we go to you, Christine, I mean, it was sort of for both of you really the extraordinary thing that I think and the magical thing that we're about to do in the next few days in this theatre is that I'm sure you've been able to play with some of the imagery in the room, but you actually haven't seen it on the set yet, have you? How do you feel about... maybe I'll just quickly switch to either yourself or Kenneth. How do you feel about the next couple of days and combining it all together, Kenneth?
As Ari mentioned, this is the first time that this company has been on this set ever. We've seen it in a workshop. We played around it when it was being built, and it was built quite early, so we had a chance to sort of play around with it then, and now it's here. But it's the first time we've seen the full thing in the space that we're... So I'm quite excited. And we start tech rehearsals tomorrow night, is that right? Wednesday night.
Christine knows all.
Did I just mess up the schedule? All of these elements coming together at that time is such a special time in a production process, is to see all of those elements together and you feel it and you're wearing the things that your character is wearing and music bleeds in as you say things. It's a wonderful time in the theatre, so wonderfully excited about it. Sam will talk to this, but there's a few beautiful things that's happening around the speakers in the room, so that's going to be completely new to us. And then obviously the video, which we were watching in rehearsal in a television screen just behind us, is going to be across, I won't tell you where, across this entire space. So, yeah.
Christine, so tell us about the lighting and how that's going to play into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a fun one to light in that there's a very large white object in the middle that you do or don't want to hit, depending on the time. But it's kind of a really good one to light in many ways because while there are very distinct kind of times and locations to play with, and that's a lot of fun to do, it's really interesting the way that they all bleed together in this show, and I really enjoy kind of the merging and kind of like mashing of the two timelines quite a lot throughout the play. It kind of like, to me, it speaks a lot to that kind of the fact that even though the past and the present are distinct things, the past is so much a part of what you carry with you in the present, and they kind of like bleed together and inform so much of who you are now. And so I love that we kind of do a lot of that throughout, and I think that a lot of my job is kind of finding that way to bleed the two together but make it make sense, which is kind of tricky but fun as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a really beautiful process over the next few days of blending all those worlds together. So Sam, we've got Sam Chen, who's also our composer and sound designer, also the QTC debut as well. Welcome. Alongside the memory and the history, we also have the present-day world and an online space, as has been mentioned about the story. What's your approach to sound in this work?
This work is very, very fun for sound because it not only shifts in space and time, but it also shifts in language and the way the the poetry is delivered in this play is really lovely. And it's really great to be able to support that with like a lot of sound, and we want to be able to feel like we are in that world whenever we go back in time. And so in contrast to like the naturalistic present timeline, it means that I can do a lot of music and sound when we go back in time, or when we enter those abstract online spaces where, things kind of like not existing in the same space all the time. So that's always very fun. And all the bleeding, between worlds, as Christine said, it's been really great to work with these two and find those moments. We just finished, we spent the whole day working on collaborating on the QLab file and making sure that every moment was sort of supporting each other and finding all those moments where video and light and sound will go together and transform the space. So there's lots of stuff in this play that's just made it a kind of delight to work on and brainstorm all these different ways that we can bring together, support the actors in their prose. And it's been great.
So exciting. This is a question for the cast, particularly those of you who are playing past and present characters. So you've got versions of the same character. So Mike and Miguel are playing Martin, and Marcus and Marty are playing Ernie. What has that meant for you all? Like, how have you, I guess, worked together to both process that and what's distinct about the characters between the different timelines? Open to the floor. Whoever might have a response.
I think my way in was, we're going from the present day into flashbacks for these individuals, and the way I always looked at it was that memory is a very subjective thing, and it's a very personal experience, and is often charged with a lot of emotion and feeling. And so to really come at those moments from that angle, like following this wave of kind of like, and we've developed a language of how to approach the text in those moments so that it reaches that poetic height and that feeling that I think it needs. So it's very non-naturalistic, those moments, which is very different to how the two brothers in the present day are playing the characters.
For me, I was actually quite a young boy when this happened back in 1986. And I do remember the excitement. I was 10 then. In fact, it was so exciting to go out with my auntie, who was a missionary at the time and an English teacher. And she wrote a very detailed, heartfelt letter to Juan Ponce Enrile and Ramos, and posted it on her on the windows of her car. So she would take me to Camp Crame and drive around and park it there just so people could see it. Yes, it was exciting for me as a young kid. But looking back now, the gravity of that is so huge that to this day, generations of people are still feeling it, As I said in many interviews, it's not just about that moment, but that moment lives in a lot of those people involved in that movement. That, for me, it's not just a representation of characters on stage. It is actually honoring a legacy of those people that actually lived through that. So that is very important, I think, for all of us to honor that, because there are very important and very timely conversations to have.
Does anyone else want to say or reflect?
Just as a logical thing in the rehearsal room, the two Ernies and the two Martins share their own table. So when I'm giving a nod to a Martin, the young Martin is already there, and the young Ernie is already there. So I'm giving a nod to two people, to the same character, but the different versions of, which is kind of like a very odd thing. Mike, do you want to speak about how your approach is?
Well, Miguel and I we're the two local Brisbane actors. So before we actually started rehearsal, we actually got together, and I'm born and raised in Australia. I'm actually dual citizen. And Miguel, he arrived here young. So we don't really have a lot of experience or connection. So our actually approach was what are some of the physical sort of aspects of the characters that what Martin would do. So we actually just started from that. We actually started, how would he walk as a young person? How would he walk now? What can we sort of transfer from young to old? And the same with the voice. And then when we started to get into character, that's when we came into rehearsal, and we had the help of everyone, and especially Ken, to help us find our characters in that generation.
Yeah, just to extend on that, it has been quite an interesting process since I'm playing kind of the same character, but in a specific part of his life during a specific time, and especially in this world of memory. Memories are so kind of sensorial and experiential. We don't know we don't remember the details of memories, but kind of the senses. And for me, it's really about finding that the essence of that memory and experience, because that will ultimately affect how Mike plays older Martin. And it's just always a conversation between both of us in the rehearsal of if this is how my scene goes and my experience, how does that kind of inform Mike's playing of older Martin and his scenes? So it's just been a really interesting process of kind of seeing what Mike does in his scenes and how that kind of informs what younger Martin was like, and also what younger Martin does and how that informs Mike later on as well.
It also helps that we both part our hair in the middle.
We're having problems with us because I'm really curly and Marty's he's got really straight hair. So. It's been 30 years in between as well, so yes.
Changes. That's really interesting, just coming back to what you were saying, Marcus, about the legacy and the acknowledging of the history. I know that you've had some time in the rehearsal room where you've been able to bring some people into the room who were like your aunt, were there. What's that? Can anyone talk about that process of kind of the uncovering of the true stories while you're in the fictional story? Do you want to talk about that, Kenneth?
There was a time during rehearsals where 3 people that were at EDSA basically joined with the 3 young people in the cast to have a conversation about what that was like. It's almost like an intergeneration passing on of that history, and what remains in the bloodline, in a sense. What remains. So it was quite an interesting chat. Maybe, Mark, would you want to chat to how that experience was? Because there were some great stories. There were 3 very different, powerful activist women, and different aspects of that process was beautifully relayed by them.
Yeah, it really made me think a lot about things that I didn't even consider looking into. So when I was researching this play, because I don't really know much about the history of it all, because I kind of didn't have that conversation with my parents. And so a lot of the stuff that I was doing was watching documentaries, listening to podcasts, doing all the research, figuring out the dates, who's who and who's important and why. But what I really latched onto were some of the more personal things that they were kind of talking about. So I forget their name. Did not Melba? Malou spoke about how some of the activists at the time, their capacity in participating wasn't being there, but providing cardboard boxes for people to sleep in. And it made me go, oh, yeah, it was a 4-day event. It didn't, my understanding of protests in Australia have been, we meet at this time, we walk to here, we have these conversations, and then we go off. And, some people head to the park, some people head to the pub, but it never stuck to me that this was happening over 4 days. And so, like, what were people doing in that time? And that was what was really exciting for me, because my character is constantly trying to understand. And it really put me in that mindset of, like, what was it like? Like, what am I missing as an actor, and what is Leo missing as a character as well? So that was really fun to hear those stories.
Can you talk about the kind of activism that's happening now that is a theme in the play as well? Because Leo being an activist in this world in the 2022, a little bit of that alignment, if you can...
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about how activism has evolved over the years, in those 40 years, especially with the introduction of social media and the ways in which young people engage with the world and the amount of information that's constantly being churned out, and the ability to discern what we listen to and what we believe. And there's a lot of voices in those conversations, whereas back then it was a little more, I don't want to say efficient, because that's wrong. But there were less voices. And so we talk a lot about, like, the unity of that night, and, 2 million people gathered for this one thing. And the conversations are now kind of moving into what's right and what's wrong, but, like, what's right and what's wrong, who has the right to tell it, who has the right to lead it, who do we listen to and why should we listen to them? I don't want to compare to back then, but it feels more nuanced.
He used the word nuance.
Do I mean that? I'm not sure. Yeah.
There's a lot more, like, external factors that, like, I think we're contending with, right? There's, like, that like what it is to be perceived, what it is my responsibility, what is not my responsibility, what can I say, what is wrong to say, and it's all happening behind a screen, right? Whereas, like, when we were talking to these incredible women, the actual act of being an activist is, like, in communion. It's a physical shared space, and I think it's still the same thing, but it's like, we're contending with different things.
And I think to just add on to that, with how it's evolved since, ever since internet and, like, telephones, and how the world is becoming, like, one big global community, it does get a little bit more complex in that, there are protests happening in countries where the event, like, isn't in their country, like, we're protesting for Palestine, yet we don't live in Palestine, but we feel connected to what's happening there, right? And I think I find it, like, that interesting in that, yes, when you're protesting, you're so connected to it. These are 2 million people, 2 million Filipinos who live in this country, and then there's this complexity of, like, I'm a Filipino living outside of the Philippines. I'm not necessarily being oppressed by this government because I live in Australia, yet I feel strongly about it, and which is why we now have these questions of, like, am I right to be speaking about this? Like, am I the right person to be leading this movement? Just to add on to, I guess, defend why you use that word nuance, because I think there is a lot of complexity with activism today,
I think also, if it helps, that there's so many more people who get a platform these days. Like, social media has opened up the ability for anybody to speak in a way that didn't exist 40 years ago. So many people who had these experiences didn't get to share their stories on a large platform, whereas these days so many more people are part of the conversation, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It can be difficult to navigate that and to hear the right things, to find the right voices, know what to listen to, but also it's just given this kind of freedom for people who otherwise didn't get a chance to speak and be part of the conversation and create like a more nuanced conversation in that sense, because you have more people sharing their views, the more people that discuss healthily, like the better the conversation is, as opposed to just a couple of voices.
Yeah, what a great way of summarising it. And I think that's a really interesting reflection on that, you know, how times have changed over the last 40 years and how we organise ourselves socially, and then how we then go on to tell that story many years later. It's about time to really open to questions from the audience. If any of you have anything that you would like to ask this incredible collection of people here on the stage.
This is your only chance.
Yes.
Make it count.
Hello. And I'll just repeat the question once it's been for anyone listening from home.
2 questions.
Go for it.
One is, should we do any research or know anything about the era before seeing the play to help us make that, or is that told to us in the story?
Okay, that's a great... I'll do question 1. So the question is, does the audience need to do research about what was happening in 1986 in Manila before they come to see the play, or will you be able to understand not knowing the story?
Even if you don't know the history of it, there's a lot to sort of latch onto. But Leo's character is a political influencer, TikToker and stuff. So,
And without giving too much away, if I do my job right, you won't need to. All that to say, I mean, I'm sure you might get more out of it the more you look into it. I know I did before reading it. But yeah, you don't need to.
it's also discussed in the play how the Philippines is perceived by the world. So it could be an interesting thing for not to know about the Philippines and see how the people that are in the Philippines or involved in the Philippine psyche, you know, what that sort of relationship is. So either or, A or B.
Depends on how much time. When are you coming? And what was your second question?
I wanted to know if you got to work with Jordan in the room, if the writer was in there adapting the play as you were working on it.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So
Yes.
that second question is, was Jordan in the room? Was the writer with us adapting the play? And who would like to take that? Is that
Development. Who wants to talk about the development to begin with? On its way to the QPDA,
Yes.
It had a series of developments as well on its way to judging, so which was a fantastic opportunity for all of us to gather together. Different versions of this group has happened throughout 3 main stages of it, in a sense, and that was involving Jordi centrally into that. We had a development week like a month ago, 3 months, no, 4 weeks, a month ago, which was focused solely on Jordan using the capacity and the capabilities of this team in unpacking the work further. And then he was here for the first week of rehearsal and then released the play to us now, but constantly being rung, Jordi, what does this mean? What is that? What is that for? Yeah. Can you? Yeah. So yeah, it's very highly involved, but Jordan is so empathetically sharing the work with us that there's a wonderful capacity for him to collaborate and listen and hear and adapt to the needs of the company as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I would just sort of say in regards to the QPDA and the process that this play went through, and Kenneth, I've only been with the company since February, so I believe you were on every stage of that journey as well. Were you with us? It's an extraordinary award, unique to the country. The writer not only wins the award and there's a cash prize, but also there's 3, I guess, shortlisted or finalist plays that get through that I think there's 2 rounds of creative development before they then get a reading and then the winner is selected. So even the other two shortlisted plays have often gone on to have productions in other companies. And it's a really great thing, and there's nothing like it in the country. So we're really, really honoured to have that. We're currently in the process of shortlisting for our 2027 QPDA winner, so that's a very exciting process. There's a whole team of assessors reading pictures and test scripts, so it's a very rich process, and it's been wonderful to have you on loan from Sydney to be up here with us, Kenneth, to be on that journey. I guess that's a segue to say that we have, the cast and creative team almost entirely Australian Filipino as well, which is such a joy. Does anyone want to speak about that process of being a company of, culturally aligned in that process? How's that been for you all?
I think, Miguel, you'd like to say something. Go.
You can speak. Yeah.
I'll pass this one off to you, Marcus. You want to go first?
Look, it is a watershed moment. It's been described as a watershed moment. I think it's a very, very important task for us to tell this story, and it's a joy to actually work alongside all Filipino Australian cast for the world premiere of Malacañang Palace. So it'll be an extremely proud moment for all the Filipino Australian. Hopefully around Australia we'll get to see this. But you're very lucky, Brisbane.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, it's honestly such a privilege to be able to do this because, in my entire acting career, this is the first time I've ever actually got to play a Filipino, which is incredible. But it's just been a blast in the rehearsal process, just because we share. There's this kind of this shared language between us, not just like Tagalog, but kind of shared understanding, I guess. Just having this connection to the Philippines, we can just freely speak about things without without needing any further clarification. And it was funny in that I kind of took our assistant stage manager on a Filipino snack run. We were like, we need more Filipino snacks in the break room. Smiths ain't gonna cut it, man. I'm sorry.
There's a code switching as a person of color that you need to do when you're navigating spaces. It's specifically in creative spaces where we're not central to it. I've been an actor since the 1990s when theatre was still in black and white. And I so used to sort of doing that code switch, basically. And there was not a lot of that in the room. And to sort of have that capacity to not have to worry about that particular aspect and focus on the work and focus on the creativity has been absolutely astounding. So, and we have the beautiful Katrina Irati-Graham, who is our cultural and safety consultant, that's sort of guiding us through all of the stages and the steps for us to feel safe within the room, to be safe within our culture and our versions of our own culture, and to ensure that the culture that we're presenting to you is also in that sort of safe sort of space and careful and caring. Thank you.
I think we've got... yes, hello.
I'd like to know more about the playwright.
Excellent.
He lives in Sydney.
The question is, I'd like to know more. Would like to know more about the playwright. So Jordan is Sydney-based. I learnt the other day that he started. I used to work at a company in Sydney called Shopfront Theatre for Young People, and Jordan, the year I left, Jordan joined as an 11-year-old doing acting classes. So he's been making theatre and doing theatre since he was a young person. Kenneth, can you talk to us more? You probably have gone on a parallel journey with Geordie.
He did the writing course at VCA. He's been writing consistently since then. This would be his main stage debut, in a sense, but in the independent scene, a lot of his plays have been done. I was involved in a production company with him called Cuento, which means story, and we produced three of his plays. I have been in his plays. I have directed his plays. Marcus has been in one of his plays. Central to what he talks about is basically the Filipino-Australian identity, where he's coming from. He's an extremely furiously fast writer, which is excellent. As I mentioned before, quite collaborative. Any more from the Atelier experience that you can sort of pass on from?
He is a beautiful writer. A lot of what he does, there's a lot of Filipino-ness in him that needs to come out, and it comes out through his writing, which is epic, fantastic. It's multi-layered, it's very complex.
The language within this play itself that he's written, he goes into poetic floral language for 86. There's like a very specific lingo for the internet, and then the naturalism of the family in 2022. So the ability to sort of to forge in those three different threads is quite impressive. So we love our Geordie.
I met Jordan at the final QPDA workshop. Miguel and I was part of that. And as a person, just only knowing him recently, he's such a loving and caring person. We were able to work with him, and I made a suggestion, and he said, "Oh look, I'd like to keep it." But he checked with me, "Is that okay?" Like, he made sure that I was okay with it. I'm thinking, it's your play, yeah, of course. I mean, you can, just to have that generosity, just to check that I was okay with it, that stuck with me. I think will stick with me for a very long time.
Yes, and I think the thing that we spent some time with Jordan recently, he was talking about that this play is really about a moment in history. He's trying to very much tell of a time and not necessarily take a side. So he's exploring the complexities, the nuances, and wanting it to be a play for everyone, because it is also it's a moment in time, and it is also the first time that we've had. Well, it's his main stage, his QTC debut, but also his main stage theatre. So it's the first time a state theatre company has produced a play telling the story, I think, with all Filipino Australian cast. So it's a watershed moment, as we keep saying, and I think he feels that responsibility deeply, and has navigated that journey extraordinarily with all of you.
The core of the thing that he's exploring in the play is that time in history has basically caused the Filipino diaspora. It was the reason for the Filipino diaspora being so spread out all over the world.
Yeah.
And I think from that point of history, what are the lines that go down, and how much you carry through, even however diasporic you sort of end up in, however far you go to. So yeah, it was very important for Geordie to sort of to see the family, the people that were affected by that, but not necessarily which side of politics they belong to or who they're fighting for. So the play is not a propaganda piece about anti or pro or anything. It's about how that particular time sort of bleeds into people's lives and how it affects them.
Yes, hello.
Hi, my name is Cecile, and first of all, congratulations. I feel so proud to be a Filipino. I've been here for the last 23 years. We've been watching plays in Sydney and here, and it's the first time that I will see a Filipino story and all cast in a play. So congratulations, right? So I have a question. I was 14 years old when EDSA happened, and we left the Philippines during the EDSA DOS. We migrated to Australia, and we've been here for the last 25 years. And one of the arguments that we have in our household is, would we still care about the Philippines? We've been here for the last 20 years. We've been paying taxes in Australia. We're Australian now. Why would we still care about the Philippines, especially with what's happening now? And as you said, Marcos Air Bongbong is back in the Malacañang. So after 20 years, it's still the same story. So my question is, as watching this play, I think next week, will it help us answer the question, would we still care about the Philippines, being Filipinos in Australia right now?
That's an incredible question. I'm just going to paraphrase it for the people listening at home. No, it's amazing. So we have Cecile in the audience here, who's lived in Australia now for 25 years, and the crux of the question is, will this play help Cecile answer the question of why would I care about? Do I still care about the Philippines now? It feels like similar things are happening now that were happening 40 years ago that caused my family to move to Australia, and you feel Australian, you are Australian. Will this make you care more about the Philippines? Who wants to take that one?
Oh dear, I feel like I've been talking too much. But interestingly enough, when you were saying the question, we were all pinging with like the Bong Bong's election starts there, is mentioned. It's one of the catalysts in the thing. People talk about identity within it. Leo wants to go back to the Philippines without sort of giving away any of the story. All of the internal questions you were having is part of the lifeblood of these characters, in a sense. So they say that when theater reflects society and you see yourself as a mirror and stuff. There's a stage that we have to do. If it's not a Filipino face that you see on the mirror, it's fine, I can go around it, but you will see kind of closer to your face on the stage, which is fantastic. And all the stuff that you were talking about, all spoken about in the play. Do you want to sort of mention a few, or?
If I may as well, it's like it adds into like what we were talking about in terms of like who gets to fight this fight, and like why should I care now, and like how trauma can become inherited, and how history it moves in cycles. We're still fighting the same things that we were fighting, 40 years ago. So I think definitely that's like one of the main themes, I would say, of the play. Yeah.
The short answer is yes. And
see, I don't know the answer. Concise.
No, the short answer is yes, and multiple times, so not just once.
You might actually also hear your name in the play.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
One of the greatest joys in doing this play was the research. Now, as mentioned, I'm dual citizen, Filipino Australian, but I was born in Australia, born and raised. And I mentioned very earlier on in the play that I actually identify with Leo. So the only connection I had was with my mother and my father, but at the age of Leo, I really wanted to learn more about my history, about where my family came from, and to the point, it got to the point, it's like, why is my parents reacting like that when I say something? And I wasn't really asking that question at the time, but now I'm asking, okay, it's starting to make sense now. So it's really identity, and I think you cannot escape that. It doesn't matter, I think, whatever country, so yes.
Just to speak on that, I mean, I think like as Filipino people, we're just very caring, and especially since part of our culture is like so diasporic, we're just so connected to the country, not through like because it's borders, but it's because we're connected to the people, like. It's incredible to me as a people that like wherever you see like a Filipino, it feels like your family, So yeah, definitely, I think seeing this play will definitely make you care more, because it shows you that you don't need to have been like back to the Philippines to care about the Philippines. It's because we care about our other Filipinos. It's that concept of kabayan. Wherever you go, you're connected to your people. I don't know.
Interesting. I think that's a really, really beautiful and rich response. And I'd love to know what night you're coming, because I'd also love to talk to you after the show, because that's the beautiful thing about
think it's
theatre.
a longer conversation.
Yeah,
yes.
It
Cecile,
is, because
I think
I'm sure it'll have an effect, and however you respond will be the right response for you as theatre. That is what theatre is about. But I do think from the heart and the stories that have been told, I'm sure it'll give some kind of response for you. I'm really interested to see, particularly if you have someone who's felt disconnected, how that, the layers of what you're about to see kind of lands with you. So there's going to be some great conversations in the foyer afterwards. Did you want to say something?
To add to that, I think there are a lot of entry points in to that conversation. across generations, within generations. So I think no matter what your stance is on a certain question or idea, I think it'll be questioned potentially. And there's different people you'll side with and line up with, and there are people that'll confuse you. And I think that's what's so great about this text is like Geordie's written such rich characters that are all opinionated and can have a conversation. So there's a lot of conversation. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. There was one here.
It's a very frivolous question. I want to know if the furry creature is a paid extra.
Come on.
Can you tell us about your friend?
This is a beautiful plush toy that we've coronated Bunyan Bill. But Katrina brought this thing in, and all of us have like just an absolute affinity for it. Like as soon as we saw it, because it came in like a box of board games, we were like, what is that? And it's kind of just made its way as like a sort of emotional support toy throughout the process. So sometimes Mig is holding it, sometimes Mark is holding it. But yeah, it's just the perfect shape.
It looks like there's going to be a process for the director over the next few days to kind of remove from the stage. So I don't believe he's in the set in the costume design.
Just in rehearsals today, I'm giving them notes, and there's them looking at me and Bunyan looking at me, going like, should I give Bunyan a note as well? I'm not sure, but you're there, okay. They're going really well anyway.
Oh, well, on behalf of everybody... Oh, sorry, was there one burning last question? Okay, one last question.
I was just wondering, for the people in the cast who don't remember the event, weren't around in 1986, what was the research aspect like for you as someone who literally was not there? And were there any struggles with connecting with it?
Thank you. I'll paraphrase for the audience online. So the question was, for the people who were not there in 1986... what was the process of doing the research, and did you struggle with any of that content or that process, trying to make sense of it?
I personally didn't have much connection with it at all. Like I think the extent of my knowledge of the People Power Revolution was Imelda Marcos and shoes. But the amount of the research was particularly fascinating for me. I think there's a lot of reflections, and looking at the Philippines as a microcosm of global events at the moment as well is really interesting. I think this applies to a lot of different places as well, not to the Philippines specifically, but yeah, it was a really fascinating experience for me, having not much connection, and then learning it through the play, and then going beyond, looking into the architectural drawings and that kind of stuff of Malacañang and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a really fascinating time and story, and particularly revolution. Yeah.
Into that, you probably knew more than me before I started this. Truly, it was so interesting, getting on this project, because I really showed me that I didn't really know much about Filipino history, especially being disconnected from it. And I think the process for me was, there's getting the facts, the dates, the history, what actually physically happened. But for me, it was more important about what was the actual lived experience of people through that time. So it was it was getting to know, hearing the stories of what was it like living through martial law. What was life like leading up to that moment? What was it like, being part of that crowd? What were people thinking? What were people feeling? Who were they with? What were they hoping for? To really fulfill the big feelings and emotions that are in this play, especially in the world of 1986.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that struck me, I think, when we were talking with Geordie the first week he was here, and it was a point that was made that this is, I believe, the only revolution in history that occurred and was successful without bloodshed. So, kind of to your point of the Filipino people and the importance of family, not only is this a watershed play, but that was a watershed moment society-wise, and I can't even imagine a revolution occurring in this time and day, achieving that. So, yeah, what an extraordinary time in history. It's for those of us who haven't done the research, I think seeing this play is going to be incredible. It opens on the 18th of October and runs till the 1st of November. It's a story about family, history, and a story about the future. If you haven't got your tickets, I really encourage you to get some, bring your friends. It is, as we say, it's the first time, and it will be, I just don't want anyone to miss out. So if you are connected to community and people who you know could benefit from seeing this play, please spread the word. We can't wait to welcome you all back to the theatre whenever you're coming in the next little while. And I think that's us for tonight. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, everyone.